I think it shifted the mindset of people to say like, okay, like instead of figuring out how I fit within this job, let's figure out how this job fits within my life. Like, what am I getting from it? Content versus context. That's how I look at career mapping versus a job search, right? Like, there's always opportunities for growth or for you to explore your interests. It's just all about how you kind of maneuver and kind of play that game.
Hi all, good morning. So today I have Brian with us who focuses on the why. His why is always consistent, where everything he does, personally and professionally, is to inspire individuals and encourage organizations to expand their mindset when thinking about growth. He's all about the growth mindset, where he thinks that people can change, people can learn from their experiences and grow from those. Let's welcome Brian on 10 Minutes of Hiring Wisdom, where he will tell us about how he got here, where he works, and what he's learned along the way. Hi Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. That was one of the best intros that I've had in a while. So thank you, Manal. I really appreciate that.
I am glad you like that. I did
Yeah.
my best. So, Brian, would love to understand from your experiences. You've mentioned a lot about how it's not much about getting in the door, but it's also about how to navigate the role by living a fulfilled career life. So, can you
hmm
elaborate a little more on that? How do people get to that stage?
I think that is through trial and error. So I think I'm not saying that, like you can walk into any job and just be able to get it. But the way that I look at a job, a career, it's more of a tool, right? I think that, and we've seen that with the pandemic, we've seen that with the Great Resignation, that people just want to find work they truly enjoy and stuff they really care about. So I think it shifted the mindset of people to say like, okay, like instead of figuring out how I fit within this job, let's figure out how this job fits within my life. Like, what am I getting from it? What do I want it to provide for me? So it's more of a resource. And of course, like it provides, it keeps the lights on, but it's just more so like, how am I spending my time, and is this giving me enough time to actually pursue and do the things that I would like to do that help me define fulfillment for myself?
Okay, a follow-up question. So you mentioned trial and error. So I think it depends on the personality of people. Some people are risk averse. Some people do doesn't like to
Yeah.
take risk. So how exactly, for example, if a person is working in a company, he's definitely not enjoying, he's not happy. But then again, he can't quit his job because he has a family to provide for. So how can
Mhm.
he have that side hustle that would allow him to explore his options and then go for a career, jump into that specific field that would eventually lead him to find his
Mhm.
purpose?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm not saying that everybody should get up and just quit their job and just be really picky, because the thing about it is that you have to kind of learn how to navigate corporate America in general. Like, there's always opportunities for growth or for you to explore your interests. It's just all about how you kind of maneuver and kind of play that game. And I think that that is a part of the growing process. So even if you're a person that doesn't take as many risks, there still are ways that you can kind of like explore interests even in your job, right? So just working with different teams, taking on different assignments that are outside of your team, or just like working on skills that you want to develop. And I've worked with people that have made career changes in their job because they felt that, instead of me being a customer success person, I want to become a software engineer. And you know what they did? They got an assignment with the product team, and this took them to become a software engineer eventually because they built those relationships. So of course, like, we have to provide and it's a privilege to say like, yeah, I can be picky about the types of jobs that I want to have. But even if you don't take those risks, it's just more so understanding like what's in front of me in this job right now. How can I leverage the skills that I have, but also the relationships that I have, in order to figure out what that fulfillment looks like for me. So I think that first, get the best understanding that you can of like where you want to go. Right. I'm not saying just like quit your job willy nilly. I would say like, just really take the time to understand where you at and where you want to go and what's around you first, what's closest within your reach before you quit or decide to go to another company. And how can you use that to get to your end goal?
I love that. I think a lot of people usually think that they have to take a large step in order to make that career transition. But
Yep.
sometimes utilizing all the resources that you have in front of you, whether it's working with different teams, whether it's just
hmm
learning online courses, is
hmm
something that can cause you to think and explore your possible options. So I like that, and thank you for sharing that.
Exactly.
So my
Exactly.
next question, Brian, would be: is you've spoken a lot about job searching and the differences between job searching and career mapping. So can you
Yep.
touch a little more on that? Like, how exactly are they different, and how do people look at those?
I feel like they get used. I don't think they're used. in the right ways. A lot of times I think that just with, the great resignation with layoffs, like I think that not everybody, a lot of people have become like resume coaches, job search coaches, career coaches, like, and everybody understanding that criteria is really just understanding like the difference between content and context, right? What do I mean by that? So job search strategy, it needs a lot more content. So when you think about your resume, when you think about, interviews, when you think about more so like, all right, like what do I need to do in order to actually get the job? Like that is content that you need. Like you need to know how to submit an application. You need to know how to like, reach out to somebody, have an informational interview. You need a cover letter. You need to have your portfolio together. You need to have all these things together. So it's about content, right? In order to get to where you want to go. That is job searching, right? But a lot of people, again, let me stop saying a lot. Some people, it's hard for them to have the foresight to see like how what they're doing right now in this job search benefits them in the long term, right? So what I mean by career mapping, it provides a lot more context, right? So it's just more so like not only are you going to get this job, but how are you going to navigate after you actually get in that seat, right? So how does this, like, as you're job searching, right? What is the vision for yourself, like even after this job? Because you're going to get tired of it. Like maybe after a year, maybe after a year and a half, it's going to happen because just as humans, like our interests change over time, and that's perfectly fine. You can still be doing the same thing, but you might want to do it in a different capacity. So it's just like, okay, like let's not just think about this job search or just think about where you're at right now as like, okay, I just know I got to get out of here. And I feel like interviewing is the thing that's going to like fix everything. It's more so like, all right, like, so what are your interests? What do you think your long-term interests are? What do you want to explore? What's the type of company that you want to kind of go to in order to explore those ambitions, those interests? Like what are you looking for out of that company to provide you versus just a job, right? So job search is just more so like content, right? You get that content and it's like, okay, I can go get a job, right? You could teach anybody how to get a job, in my opinion. But to have a thorough conversation, a holistic conversation about, all right, we're going to talk about this job, but like, why? Like, essentially, like, oh, you say you want to be a product manager. Why? Because everybody else is doing it? Or like, how does this fit within like your interests or what you want to do? Right. And that even helps with the content part of your job interviews, such as interviewing and things like that. So, content versus context. That's how I look at career mapping versus a job search. Right.
Oh, I like that. No,
Yeah.
no, that's very interesting because I
Yeah.
think people
Yeah.
tend to use these terms interchangeably when they can mean very different when you actually look into it at a deeper level. So thank you
Exactly.
for sharing that, Brian. Brian, my next question for you would be is there's a lot of emphasis these days on soft skills. You
Hmm.
mentioned a lot on how you should effectively communicate with your boss, how you should manage your expectations.
Hmm.
So how can an individual specifically communicate in a way that would benefit both the manager as well as the individual in coming up, like in dealing with their day-to-day responsibilities?
Hmm.
What are some effective strategies when it comes to that?
It really starts with understanding it will be different. Well, it starts with the interview process in itself, right? So I think that oftentimes, like, well, not often, but sometimes you'll get the question of, like, what's your management style, right? Even as an individual contributor. And the hiring manager can usually ask you this just to get a sense of like how you want to be managed. If you're just somebody who says like, I like to meet with my manager like this time and that time, that's not giving a lot of context. It's like, no, like, usually I'm pretty independent when it comes to my work, or I prefer when I'm brainstorming to work with my manager in this way. Like, that's how you kind of like start to build that rapport with your manager. Cause in the interview process, it's like, oh, like, I know how to like talk to this person. Of course, there's going to be some kinks, but they have a pretty good understanding that, okay, like, this is the way that they prefer to be managed. Let's try it out, see what happens, right? It could change when you get in the job, but at least that hiring manager has that context. When you're actually in the job, it's really understanding like it's going to be some ups and downs, some bumps and bruises when it comes to that relationship, because you two don't know each other. You two don't understand like, how you worked in the past versus how you work now. And the way that manager manages one direct report can't assume that they're going to do the same thing when it comes to you. So I think that, having those transparent conversations, like when you're actually in that seat over those first like 3 months in that job, like saying like, hey, like I've noticed that, we have a lot of these types of meetings, right? With just that person and that manager. I asked them the question, do you think this is the best use of time? Or even asking the manager, like, what do you want to get out of these meetings, right? So I think that just like asking the manager, like, hey, like I just want to get a better understanding as far as like what is the goal? How should I come prepared? What are the things that I should be? What is the information that you want to hear from me? Because then that like creates an open dialogue. Like, hey, the manager can say like, I require this of you, but it's on the manager too to be like, listen, like, how would you like me to come prepare for this meeting, or how do you want to spend this time in the best way possible, right? So then you're able to like have that dialogue, and you're able to be a lot more transparent versus like just saying like, okay, like I guess this is how they manage, so it is what it is. Like, nah, it's never that. Like, you have to be productive too, along with your manager. And manager job is to adjust and develop you. So at the same time, how can they do that if you all aren't listening to each other, or they're just assuming that this is the way that you want to be managed? So it's really like the big word I use there is empathy. Like taking the time to just like empathy, using active listening styles in order to really like understand what that person needs, and you understanding what your manager requires of you.
Okay, no, I think one thing that stood out to me was the manager's job is to adjust and develop you. I
Hmm.
think for the longest time, there's always been this preconceived notion
Hmm.
that it's supposed to be a one-way street where you're supposed to listen to the people at the hierarchy. When now a
Hmm.
lot that shift's changing. I think it's a dialogue where people are open to understanding what both parties want and then coming up with a
Exactly.
solution that would be best catered to the problem on hand. So thank you so much for sharing that,
Of
Ryan.
course.
Brian, but other than that, empathy for sure is something that is universal. People come from different cultures, people come from different religions, but empathy
Hmm.
allows you to understand the differences, and the differences can essentially
Yeah.
coexist,
Yeah.
where people can utilize their differences to come up with the most innovative solutions at the end of the day, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
important thing. But thank you so much, Brian. Our time is up. It was a pleasure learning about you, what it takes to have a career fulfilled life, how people can navigate through their career transition, and what
Mhm.
it takes to develop a strong internal dialogue between you and your manager to come up with the best possible solution.
Of course. Of course. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate
Of
the
course.
time.